Welcome to the 30/30 Health Podcast. The following discussion is for education and entertainment. It is not intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first discussing it with your doctor. Here is your host, Guillermo Ruiz.
Hello everyone, this has been such an amazing month. I just finished my naturopathic degree program and I am studying for boards. I am balancing my study schedule and my podcasts with some amazing interviews. But since I am putting around 8 hours of study time per day, my blog posts are being neglected for the time being. I will try to send an email with some updates in the near future. I am working with my friend Billy Mitchell on a monster post on nutritional iron. Just be patient. I will try my hardest to get it out as soon as I can. My guest today is Mike Ritter. He is a NASM certified personal trainer and corrective specialist, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and functional range conditioning mobility coach. Mike's fitness nutrition philosophy is based around the foundational belief that people can heal and thrive naturally. His work as a New Age fitness specialist and metabolic coach has been featured in Paleo Magazine, Paleo Magazine Radio, and the Robb Wolfs Paleo Solution podcast. He is also co-author of the Ebook Balance Stress, which was nominated Ebook of the Year by Paleo Magazine. If you want to stay up to date with my speaking appearances and blog posts, go to my website and sign up for my mailing list. And remember to download the free ebook, The Top Supplements for Your Natural Medicine Cabinet. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Hi everyone, I'm here with my friend Mike Ritter, and he is in sunny Florida. How are you doing, Mike?
Guillermo, what's going on, brother? This is an absolute dream to be on the 30/30.
Yeah, the 30/30 strength, and it's a funny story, okay? So I want to start with that. When I was in Florida, I used to live in a house in Orlando that had a basement. Now, how many houses in Orlando do you know, or in Florida, do you know that have basements? So
few and far between.
Yeah, very few and far between. So when I had my basement, I started doing the paleo thing, and I read Mark Rippetoe's Starting Strength, and I built a squat rack with wood. And I would have my friends come over, and we would work out and have these philosophical discussions about food and nutrition and life. And it was, and then one of my friends says, "We gotta name this gym," and I called it 30/30 Strength and Conditioning. So this 30/30 Strength and Conditioning that started around 8 years ago, has developed into 30/30 Health Podcast and the 30/30 Strong website, and it's just such a labor of love, and I want to continue growing this 30/30 movement, man. And it's people like you that are going to help me bring this to the masses. So Mike, for those people that don't know about you, dude, what is your hero story? How did you come into this movement?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was kind of it was a rocky road, and as I think a lot of people are coming to find out who have been at this fitness thing for a while, is that it's not really like, it's not a linear process. It's a painstaking process at times. It's a lot of trial and error in the beginning, especially if you're less informed when you start. I particularly started with a weight loss journey. I was a college baseball player. I've said this on a number of times in some presentations, and I think a lot of people connect with my little weight loss story, is that I played sports, baseball, football in high school, baseball in college, and then once that structure was gone, when I actually left sports, I kind of lived the normal life, so to speak, where you drink a lot of beer and eat a lot of pizza, and I didn't have somebody telling me to wake up early in the morning and go lift, somebody telling me to eat better. I didn't have structure around me. So I think once you're a competitive person, though, if you spend a long time kind of letting yourself go, eventually the competitiveness comes back. And it came back for me. Eventually, one day I just realized I just was not happy with where I was. I was in denial for a long time that I was kind of letting myself completely go. And so once I decided to then lose weight, I also realized that even though I had structure around me to keep me lean and athletic, I was not inquisitive near enough to actually know what I was doing. So once I actually decided to get back in shape, I needed help. It didn't take me but 2 weeks of trying to work out by myself to figure out that I had no idea what I was actually doing. So I had to hire a personal trainer. I read every website that I possibly could, like calorieking.com was like the first one I got introduced to, where you could research nutrition facts. It's kind of like the starter kit for, food labeling and all that. So it took me a long time to actually lose weight, but once I got going, I got very addicted, and I got more addicted to sharing information. What kind of lit me up was once I actually made some progress and lost 35, 40 pounds, friends started asking me what I was doing. Family started asking me what I was doing. And I noticed that I just felt more alive than I had in a long time, especially maybe since I was even playing sports. By then, it might have been an 8-year gap. And I felt alive, like actually coaching people and helping them. And when they inquired, I had so much to say, because I was coming from a place of experience and knowledge at the same time. And so I decided to give this personal training thing a go. And that pressure of being in front of somebody and somebody handing you over their credit card to say, hey, like, help me, please. That pressure of, being on stage and being the one responsible for somebody else's health brought a lot out of me. And I am one of those people that I'm driven by, I guess you could call it the fear of failure, where when somebody's depending on me, I rise, a lot higher than if I'm depending on myself. And somebody else is, I'm an obliger. I want to help you out a lot. And so that brought a little more out of me. And so every problem that came to me, I wanted an answer. So I didn't want to come up with it myself. I wanted to go visit an expert. So I would write to people, I would email people, I would, scour the internet for whatever I could find on a particular subject to help a client. And then after 8 or so years of doing that, and just digging, I arrived where I am right now.
It's so interesting, that a couple of things that you said, like whenever we fix our health, and whenever it's intrinsic, whenever you discover, I mentioned before that one of the biggest things that the paleo diet, or whatever we want to call it now, has given me is the ability to control my health. Before, it was like a shot in the dark. Maybe I'll try this diet. Maybe I'll stop boozing for a couple of months, and then you relapse and you forget. But having this very explicit or simple approach to health, an evolutionary approach to health, it's just such a good scaffolding for building you up. And then you become so enamored with this idea that you start becoming like the biggest prophet for diet. And then like people, that approach you because you're feeling better, you're trying to convince them, or you're trying to tell them how to change the diet. And then after that honeymoon phase happens, how do you keep yourself on top of it to continue motivating people into changing? Because one of the biggest things about going into helping others, and like you said, after you swipe that card, you gotta have results. So how do you keep motivated to continue with the ever-changing tides, with the ever-changing ideas or hypotheses, or dissent from online discussion boards? How do you keep yourself grounded and continue your movement?
Well, I'll tell you, it really ends up boiling down to, for me, is not buying as much into modalities as into principles. So, for instance, like say fitness-wise, CrossFit is a modality. Kettlebell training is a modality. As far as diet goes, the zone diet is a modality. Paleo, you could call it a modality. But there's certain dietary principles that when you really get down to, if you're a research geek and you get into the research, or you're somebody who just experiments on themselves and your research is, N equals 1 only, you're going to notice there are some principles that never go away no matter what you call it, no matter what changes in your life. As many variables as there can be in your life, there are some things that never change. So I talk to people about, and to me, this is the sustaining part of any fitness program or any kind of wellness approach, is talking to people about stressors, like things that actually are counterproductive to health or could benefit your health. Could be categorized in my line of thinking is stressors. One is emotional. 2 would be your diet. 3 is exercise. 4 is environment. Your surroundings affect you. And then rest and sleep. Those are all things that can affect your health at any given time. So rather than thinking I'm joining this program, it's this exercise program. If you go into it expecting to fix all of your problems, when it's just one variable in your wellness, you are a potential to fail ultimately at some point, unless you recognize it as just one piece of the overall picture. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Because let's spend some time on nutrition, because that's going to be the most graspable topic. Like, for example, if you want to do a ketogenic diet or a zone diet or a paleo diet or a primal diet or a vegan diet or all of those, might work for you. One of them might be a little bit more optimal, but if you use real food and you cut out the garbage, all the processed, paleo brownies or vegan brownies or keto brownies or, zone brownies, you can call, if you cut those out and you stick to eating real food, that principle is going to supersede whatever modality of diet you're using.
Bingo. Spot on.
Now, can you give me, like, for example, and I don't know how to bridge the subject, but one of the things that has really helped me with my health is actually your ebook on how to balance stress. And I recommend any of my listeners, we'll have a link on my blog so you can download it. It's completely free, and it's a primer for you to start getting into these big concept ideas. Can you tell us a little bit about how to eliminate stress from our life?
Yeah, well, one thing that I'm really glad you asked that, because this is where I really start getting going. Like, stress is, in my opinion, one of the least understood and possibly the most impactful part of our health. People think of stress as this giant bulldozer, like plowing through their life. You might wake up early in the morning, have a cup of coffee, and be thinking about this national strategy meeting going on. Okay, and so on one hand, there's a difference between anxiety and fear. Fear, if you look up the definitions of the two, they're almost identical. Both of them are a stressful response to an external stressor. But anxiety, the difference between fear is a stress response to a threat. Anxiety is the same stress response when there's no actual threat. And that's a major difference. So instead of thinking about, stress as this external thing plowing through your life, your stress is actually the response to an external factor. You do actually control the response to those external factors. Okay, so number one, that's very important to understand. 2, those different variables of stress, your diet, exercise, emotional response, sleep, they're all very interactive. So I'll give you an example. If you don't sleep very well emotionally, the next morning you're not going to feel very well or very motivated. Motivating can drop down. Lack of sleep also affects leptin levels. Okay, so there's been studies that I've read where people were sleep deprived to about 4 to 6 hours a night for just 6 days in a row, and their leptin levels were roughly about the same as someone who had been fasted about a 900 calorie diet 3 days in a row.
And that's without the calorie deficiency.
That's without an actual calorie deficiency.
So you are being so stressed about this lack of sleep that your body has to mitigate this stress somehow. So the idea of the body says, I guess calories is going to be, so it's going to push you to be hungry.
Yeah. And so that affects overeating or cravings. And so then that leads you to poor dietary choices. Those poor dietary choices affect your ability to perform in a workout or any fitness program. It's a big cyclical effect. And so rather than thinking about stress as just this one big monster, think about it as elephants on a seesaw. Okay. And the one thing that we know a lot more about bodies now in modern science than 100, 200 years ago. And Bruce McEwen and Robert Sapolsky, two guys that are major researchers, some of the leading researchers in the stress field, they coined the phrase allostasis. Now, if we all go back to our high school biology classes, high school science classes, and we were introduced to the term homeostasis, right? Homeostasis is the body at, rest, or the body at optimal levels. Well, we know now that the body is never actually functioning 100% everywhere all the time. If you're going through a stressful event, the digestive system ramps down just a little bit. The reproductive system ramps down a little bit. Some of those primal drivers for movement, like high blood sugar, cortisol, start elevating. Different parts of the brain center start elevating. Your body's always counterbalancing itself. Okay, so instead of thinking as like stress as all of these things happening to you, it's just certain variables interchanging. So you can control some of them and make sure that you're optimizing the ones that might not be receiving attention. Like when you're stressed out or you have a lot of emotional stress, make sure you're getting enough sleep. When you're getting enough sleep, you have a little more energy to exercise. So one can help the other.
And mitigate the effects of leptin and mitigate, all this different stuff that is going to add more stress on top of stress.
Absolutely. And so even on top of that, one thing that is, I think, misunderstood about exercise, for instance, is that exercise does not build you up. Intense exercise does not build you up. It breaks you down. That's the purpose of exercise. So then you can actually recover and heal and adapt and grow stronger later. If you are low sleep and you are not eating very well or very low calorie chronically over time, exercise could be your best friend or it could be a sword in the gut. So it's very important, again, treat exercise like a variable, not a necessity. Movement's a necessity. We have to move a lot. And that's a very good de-stressor. Walking, doing high range of motion exercise at lower intensities can be very, very healthy if you're going through, super stressed periods where you're very chronically stressed. But if you are low calorie and you have 3 presentations in a particular day and you're low sleep, going into your local gym for a high intensity exercise might just send you spiraling down the opposite direction. So it's, again, very important to understand that, these are all factors in our health and variables that we can play with.
Like, for example, before we move on to diet, I work at, I'm seeing patients at the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine clinic, and the PRC and the Pain Relief Center. We get a lot of injuries, and it's some of them is chronic disease and some of them is, your prototypical broken individual who is trying to balance their weight by out exercising their nutrition. It's like the worst storm that you can present. You have a person who is waking up at 5 a.m. to make their WOD, who are under eating because they want to lose weight, and they're working out 3 to 5 times a week to try to, until they see the white elephant in the sky, the white buffalo in the sky.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and like I'm sitting there, like in front, talking to these patients, and I'm thinking to myself, listen, instead of waking up at 5 a.m, why don't you sleep past the WOD and just, regenerate yourself or recharge yourself and just do that WOD once? But it's so addictive. How do you convince, because you're part of a training business, where you're working people, you're helping people work out. How do you put yourself out of business, by saying you need to stop exercising and you need to start moving? Because I've had this patient in front of me multiple times, and it's the hardest thing to convince. I can convince people to stop eating wheat. I can convince people to stop sugar. I cannot convince people to stop overtraining.
Well, I guess it's twofold, and you got to handle it on an individual basis. Where, as far as overtraining goes, I have to explain it to people like this: that the human body can take a lot of stress. Like humans, a fact of human life is that humans are hard to kill. Like, we're very resilient animals. Navy SEALs, firefighters, some of your community service workers. I mean, some of these people can actually perform at a high level for a while. There's a time cap on this thing. Some people are just a little more resilient to stress than others. So it just takes a little while before the bomb goes off. Now, if I'm dealing with somebody on one level, I have to figure out, are they actually overtraining or are they under recovered? So sometimes it's just a matter of people prioritizing recovery rather than just, say, going back to regular life. So you go through your high intensity exercise, you're just beat down to the ground, you have sweat everywhere, chalk all over your body. You're laying on the ground 20 minutes after everybody's gone. Then you peel yourself up, and then you go back to your national strategy meeting and deliver your presentation. People are not actually giving cell opportunity to recover. So it's, unless you're a really high-end athlete performing at the high end of your genetic potential, performing at super high levels constantly, it's very unlikely that you're actually overtraining. So sometimes it's just a matter of like, hey, let's implement some sleep strategies. Let's ramp up your diet, calorie wise, maybe a little extra protein, see if we can recover. Carbohydrates are a big deal too. That's something that, like in the paleo community, there's like debates everywhere about carbohydrates. We can talk about that later.
And thankfully, that's dying down. Thankfully, with books like Dipping Guy and Ace, The Hungry Brain, and Robb Wolfs Wired to Eat, finally, like this debate that has been happening since 2011, it's finally dying down, and we're accepting carbohydrates as a part of human life.
Yeah, and plus, as far as carbohydrates go and food choice, it does matter whether or not you're talking about somebody who's metabolically broken or a completely healthy human being who's lifting weights all the time. The rules do change a little bit. Like, for instance, if lifting weights is healthy, right? Doing push-ups is healthy. But if I break my arm, push-ups are no longer healthy for me. I have to get it, put in a sling. I have to hold it there for a while, let it heal. Then I have to do some physical therapy. And there's some certain things that I still can't do in physical therapy. There's a protocol to follow. And then I can start doing push-ups again. So if I'm a healthy person doing high intensity glycolytic exercise that is just super high pace, you're probably going to have to replenish some glucose if performance is your goal. So the keto ideas can be very good for fat loss, blood sugar regulation, improving insulin sensitivity, mental clarity. Like, there's a lot of benefits to both, but it's kind of like we separate different camps and ideals. It's like, you have one dietary camp that's, like has to be all high carb, and the other dietary camp that's like all low carb. It's like the Montagues and the Capulets, arguing back and forth over nothing. It's just, it always ends up being, it depends on an individual's tolerance to carbohydrates. It depends on your activity levels. Even some of the keto research that I've read from Jeff Volek, who has an excellent book on keto performance, his research is mainly geared towards ketogenic diet and athletic performance, not necessarily fat loss or cancer research or anything like that. But a lot of the benefits that they saw ended at about 77% VO2 max. So if you're going beyond that 80% maximum effort or higher for more than 20 minutes a day, you're going beyond the positive effects of keto. Now, I know there are some, ketogains.com, I think, is a group of guys that are actually pulling off some pretty cool stuff with keto and higher intensity stuff, but they have to do something very specific. Like, they're still experimenting with that. But as a general rule of thumb, it's not evil if you're having carbohydrates trying to fuel athletic performance.
And this is not to shit on the keto groups or on the high carb groups. It's like,
not at all.
It's like there's a couple of people in the middle who are being very open-minded, and they're doing like a mixed approach. And both groups are just like rolling their eyes at them, and it's frustrating because if you really listen to the figureheads of the this movement, we're not contradicting each other. But sometimes it's more attractive to have a hard line than be, well, maybe, and that's so much more difficult to incorporate. And you do see a couple of people that are performing at high level with a ketogenic diet, and there's some people that are performing at a high level with a carbohydrate diet or a vegan diet, or it doesn't matter. And because, we see this peak, then we want to be like this peak, but these are outliers. And unless you're an outlier, you're gonna have to be, in the middle of the mean in order to have the best performance available. And then maybe experiment and change your macros, change your fuel to oxygen ratio, and then get the best for you. But there's
a study. I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you're getting me all excited over here.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a study that I frequently put into my presentations, and Rob brought this up at PaleoFX 2 years ago. That's where I latched onto. It was on Cell.com, where this group got an 800-person cohort, fed them 46,000 different types of meals. Like, everyone got an identical meal 46,000 times. And they found a high variance in glucose reactivity to every meal. basically meaning there's no rhyme or reason to any of this stuff. So you ate a meal, I ate a meal, and she ate a meal, and we all had different blood sugar reactions to it. So where you are in your life and the fact, like all of the factors impacting your health affects your food choices and what you're tolerant of and the macronutrient ratios thereof. So it's, like you said, it's not a very sexy brochure to sell a nutrition program called It Depends. No one wants to buy that. But I've had a lot of success and, with working with people on an individual basis based on all of these variables. And it ends up being a much more sustainable approach. I mean, if that's what you actually want, then the only way that you can actually come out, clean on the other side is if you take into account all of these factors in your health, monitor them, educate yourself a little bit about them, and then work on one at a time.
And being mindful of, going back to stressors, being mindful of what we consider a stressor. Like, for example, around testing season at the school, you hear a lot of people say, I don't give a damn, I'm just going to eat whatever because I'm stressed. And they don't realize that just eating bad food is in itself a stressor. So in reality, a better approach would be to have your food to be as clean as possible for that period of time, to take away a stressor from your life. Because, hey, if failing or passing a class depends on me pulling an all-nighter, I'm going to do it because that's very important and I don't want to be left behind. So I cannot modify that stress. But I can protect myself by doing other things, like, for example, not go out to exhaustion in my exercise, having the cleanest meal as possible during my lunchtime and my dinner time. And then the opposite side is, if you are on vacation, and you hear this a lot, like people go vacationing and then they just eat whatever, but they are so de-stressed because they're sleeping longer, they're having good relationships because now they're like fraternizing and having fun. And now that those stressors go away because now they don't have to make a presentation or, do a final exam, and now they have a little bit more latitude with their food. So we need to identify what's a stressor. Eating a gallon of ice cream is a stressor, whether you believe it or not.
The man that I mentioned earlier, Dr. Robert Sapolsky, said on a documentary about stress that in all of his research on primates, and he's done human studies, he's boiled stress in people's lives down to two major principles, and that's a lack of predictability and a lack of control. And when you siphon through your story just now and you pick out all of the controllable parts, diet was a major piece of that. So as much as people want to just lose control of their diet during a stressful time, all you did was add more lack of control into the fire. So if more control and more predictability lowers stress levels, then if you look at all the controllable and uncontrollable factors, what you put in your mouth and what you bite might be the actually the most controllable and actually bring you the most sense of mind once you actually hunker that down. Because if everything else is uncontrollable, you can't control how your boss reacts.
Traffic.
But you can definitely control what goes. Yeah, traffic. There's all kinds of factors. It's very important to distinguish the two. How you move, when you move, and to what intensity, you can control that. What you eat, how you prepare, you can control that. Absolutely.
And it seems like we have like two buckets, the uncontrollable and the controllable. And that uncontrollable, there's nothing we can do about, and that's going to keep dripping in and filling. The controllable should be controlled in accordance to what the uncontrollable is doing.
Absolutely. Very well said, Guillermo. I think you just solved all the world's problems.
Yeah, that's it. Now we can go, let's go to Nicaragua and farm coconuts with Robb, man.
Amen.
So now, one of the things that you mentioned a while back was how when we are stressing out, okay, when we are being stressed, one of the things that shuts down is reproduction. So what does that on a hormonal level, what does that look like? What is that picture showing up as in your practice?
Well, you have two sides to your central nervous system, two major sides. And one that I bring up specifically with clients is talking to them about the autonomic nervous system and sympathetic and parasympathetic balance. So the best analogy is like, this is first off, this is a very primal system, in our bodies. Like it doesn't, it's still the human nervous system is still what it was thousands of years ago. It's a primal reaction to stressors. So your sympathetic response is, the same type of nervous system response you get when you think about somebody, I don't know, breaking into your house. If you think about the presentation you have later, getting stuck in traffic if it overwhelms you, or if there's an actual threat present, like an actual workout or a barbell, or something that is physically overwhelming to you. That nervous system response, that sympathetic response, raises cortisol. It raises blood sugar. Cortisol is also an anti-inflammatory, and it's a catabolic hormone. So it helps break down muscle tissue. It's actually very ideal in a workout setting or at a time when you actually need cortisol. It's not just a bad thing. The problem is when you start getting into that anxiety mode where there's no actual threat present and you get anxious while you sit there and you have raised blood sugar, muscle breakdown, and any inflammatory hormone flying through your body. That's when people can get into trouble. And another reason why movement is so important, to exhaust that system. The other side is the parasympathetic nervous system. So like I said, the stress system works as like elephants on a seesaw, balancing each other back and forth. So as that sympathetic nervous system elevates, the parasympathetic starts to slow down and allow for room for that sympathetic to function. So part of that parasympathetic nervous system is your digestion, certain brain centers that contemplate, like, some of the neocortex that contemplate art, and some of the higher thinking is that outer layer of our brain, kind of new part of the brain, and then your reproductive system. People that are chronically stressed, be it emotional, things taxing their immune system all the time, or chronically exercising, you have a chronically, if I want to say, deflated libido. And that contributes to a lot of the modern problems with men you see nowadays, where you see guys like 35, 40 years old. I think I just saw a study where 1 in 4 men now are candidates for hormone replacement therapy at the age of 40. That 35 to 45 range is really taking a beating right now. And it's something that's very passionate to me because I'm a dude that's 34 years old. I have a job, it's in fitness, but where I'm very active a majority of the day. I can work 50, 60 hours a week. And as a matter of fact, I've experienced times myself being in an active field where I've really drugged myself through the mud, whether it be low sleep or just overactivity. I felt that. And I've gone through that whole chronic fatigue syndrome myself. Like, I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like. I know I've looked in people's eyes at guys that were just getting absolutely railroaded as, doing a good job as a dad, doing a good job as a professional. These are good people trying to do the same things. It's just that overproductivity that is just driving it, be it fitness, work, lack of sleep, something, but that societal mosh posh of this desire to produce more and multitask more and exercise more and drink more coffee because we can't stay up is literally driving men in particular into the dirt. And I get to see it on a regular basis, and it's very scary.
So you have this people that want to come in and you see their testosterone picture. You order some labs, you see those numbers, and they're low, okay. And the immediate reaction would be to give some testosterone. In the short term, maybe that's what you need just to get them off the bump. If that's the difference between being super depressed and a functional member of society. But in that rescuable stage, maybe we can do some interventions, such as clean up your diet, maybe sun exposure, maybe having more physical contact, sexual contact, and maybe those things coupled with maybe some pointed supplementation are going to help you get out and push away the time where you need to do the testosterone replacement. And that's very important to me, because adding testosterone to someone is not removing the obstacle to health. It's changing a number, and that person will feel better. And I am not against prescribing testosterone for someone that needs it. But to jump from 0 to let's inject you with some testosterone during the first visit, without looking at maybe sleep patterns, looking at HRV, looking at nutrition, looking at all those things, that you can do before you can, maybe rescue that person and put them in a natural state of good testosterone output, to me is so much more important than just patching the tire. So what are some of the things that you're doing with your clients, okay, for two things? To help them during that rescuable phase, and second, to prevent the next generation from going into the same hole.
Well, one is, like, hey, let's cover 101. Like, all the things that we've been talking about the last 30 minutes is like, like you said, rather than patching the tire, like, let's look at the things that cause low testosterone. Sleep. People that are sleep deprived are 3 times more likely to have low testosterone. Produce extra estrogen. That estrogen testosterone balance needs to be looked at. If somebody really has a problem, for instance, I usually run a Dutch analysis on them, the dry urine comprehensive hormone test. And that gives us a lot of information, because just as important as, you can get, serum testosterone is probably the most accurate, but why is it low? Like, or do we have an androgen conversion issue? Serum testosterone is a great number to have, but one thing that it doesn't tell you is why. Do we have an androgen conversion issue? Are we low DHEA? Is there a pregnenolone issue? Like, what's going on? And getting a good picture of, your hormone pathway and some of the conversions can give us an idea, like supplementation wise, what to do about it. But there's some easy dietary interventions that you can do immediately, like for instance, the cofactors for production of testosterone: vitamin B6, zinc, magnesium. Those are very, in my opinion, very easy dietary fixes. A lot of very nutrient dense foods are also very carry, your vitamin B6, your zinc, your magnesium, and ZMA supplementation can help. There's a couple routes you can go, but until you get the information in your hands, it's very hard to make a precise, intervention as far as that goes. But, number one, a hypocaloric diet can shoot your testosterone. One thing definitely associated with low testosterone is too few calories, just flat out too few calories. A lot of people that I meet that are in the executive lifestyle, for instance, eat very little calories. They just become way too busy, and they operate, quote unquote, okay on the diet that they're on. And you might have a grown man eating 1,200 calories a day. I have people log their diet, and you just be surprised at the numbers. Like, a 9-year-old should eat that much, not a grown ass man. So there's some simple fixes there, implementing some sleep strategies. And then you mentioned heart rate variability is an incredibly valuable tool for monitoring intensities. I had a client about a year ago who was working on his testosterone levels. He had very low testosterone, very low cortisol levels. In about 7 to 8 months, we were able to double his testosterone and almost double his cortisol levels. Like, this guy was in the, extreme fatigue state, like very low cortisol levels. Like, he could not actually get enough energy to have a good workout. Like, the guy was, like, obviously very exhausted and achy everywhere, all the symptoms of low cortisol. So we use heart rate variability to monitor his intensities. So if he got a very high score on his heart rate variability, then for most of the session, we spent, we did interval training in the 80 to 90% heart rate zones. And if he started sliding on his heart rate variability scores, we used the rule of 70%. Whatever I had planned for that day, I still programmed with general good, sound strength and conditioning principles. But if his HRV started to slide a little bit, whether or not he had symptoms of fatigue or not, we pulled back the loads and the volume to 70% of what they normally would have been. So as an example, if you're working out and you're programming your own stuff, that would be, if you're back squatting as an example in your workout and your HRV starts to slide a little bit and you need to pull back, you would do 70% of 200. And maybe you take a set off. If you're doing 4 sets of 10, do 3 sets of 10 at 70% of 200 pounds. So that gives your body a chance to move. Movement and training does a very good job of, helping flush free radicals from your body. Some environmental toxins, maybe helps normalize blood sugar, helps flush some of that cortisol or use some of that has a tremendous amount of benefits. So you want to move. It's just to what intensities, and heart rate variability gives you a little bit of that nervous system read early in the morning and then earlier than symptoms arise. Because as you know, with health, when you are experiencing something that could harm your health, symptoms are usually the last thing to happen. So you have the problem, the lack of sleep or environmental toxin or something that kind of influences your system. You have cell damage. You have immune system function, low energy, and that low energy is the last thing on the totem pole that you feel after all of those things have happened. And HRV gives you a nervous system read just prior to symptoms. So you get to react accordingly in your training program before you actually get to the overtraining phase.
Yeah, well, yeah. Once you hit the symptomatic phase, it's almost like, I don't want to say too late, but it's later in the disease process. And then something funny happens. Then adaptation happens, and then that's your new normal. So now so now you're adapted, and now you think that being tired or crummy or low sex drive is the new normal, and now you don't even know you have a symptom.
Yeah, and now you have a societal buffer between yourself and what normal actually is, because when you're around a lot of other sick people, like the more men who have low testosterone and feel this way, the more normal it becomes. So not only are you talking from a biological adaptation, but from a societal adaptation, when you're surrounded by other people that feel the same way, it feels completely normal. And a lot of people don't realize how good they're supposed to feel.
One of the biggest things, and one of the things that that we learn in medical school, and sometimes, it's not that we forget, but it's just, we are so reactionary with our healthcare. Something that we forget is prevention, okay? And we have a new generation of kiddos, you have two of them. How are you going to instill these principles to kids, and how are you bringing this up to communities and teaching the next generation to prevent this catastrophe?
Well, it's something I'm very passionate about. I'm glad you brought it up. Is that me and my business partner, Michelle Richards, we own a business called The Result Cult, and it's an education wellness business. And for the last couple of years, we've flown up to the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, where this amazing man, John Brown, started this program called Elevate, where he invited low-income kids from low-income families around Wisconsin to be a part of this program that lasted 2 to 3 weeks at this university. And there's usually, I think they're all about 10th grade age in high school. And they would come to this program during the summer that would basically teach them what it was like to live in college. They ran a college schedule with them. They had classes with them. They had free time and let them do things on their own, basically to teach them, like how to handle themselves in college. It was an amazing program. But one of those days, we fly up there every year and talk to kids about stress and diet and movement, not just like fitness and exercise, but like how to move better, like how your back should feel, how to maintain posture, how to breathe well. And we go up there, and we're very passionate about that. We'll be going to University of Wisconsin or University of Minnesota this year to do the same presentation. And if we can influence just a couple kids to at least think about this on the front end, they can be saved from a lot of problems that I had, after college, not having a clue of how to move well. And the more that I've worked with those kids and the more that I've worked with adults, I've started creating this little connection and having kids of my own. I'm starting to realize that a lot of the things that we do with kids now, whether it's feed them crap in schools, every day is pizza day. We have commoditized foods as the main staple in schools. A lot of kids don't have a connection with food. That's a big deal. Where they don't know how a vegetable's grown. They don't have a garden of their own. They haven't gone through the process of growing their own food or harvesting it, or know what it's like to actually transport it. And they don't know anything about their food. I didn't, and I know a lot of kids don't. There are some kids that do, and they're very fortunate, more fortunate than they realize. But when you don't have a connection with something, you don't have an appreciation for it. So kids that grow up without any kind of connectivity to what real food actually is, versus just box dinners and microwave dinners, you're not going to appreciate it when you're older. It's very hard to appreciate real food when you're older and actually transition into diet. And I think a lot of adults have trouble transitioning from processed food to natural food because they just flat out don't have much experience with it. It's like you said, the new normal is processed food. As growing up from a young age, you're just given sugars and lollipops because that's what you do with kids, and it just becomes very normal. And so with my kids, we're putting in some raised beds in our backyard. I want to teach them what food actually looks like, what it tastes like, so they can experience it. And you don't have to create so many dietary rules and regulations and tell your kids you can't have this or you can't have that. When they actually know what it is and they can make decisions for themselves, I think it boils down to connectivity. And then I'm writing a book about our experience with our kids and our family. As a movement coach, I have a decent insight into, fitness health. There is something that's very, very going on with kids. I think that also contributes to kids becoming unhealthy men. We have a lot of, parents who I think are trying to do the right thing, signing their kids up for year-round sports, playing one sport year-round in hopes to become a professional. I play baseball. I love baseball. I'm a baseball fan, but turning in one direction thousands of times in 1 year and a throwing motion that is completely unnatural for the shoulder is only setting your kid up for psychological fatigue in the future and their body breaking completely down. A lot of professional teams and college teams, like Ohio State's popular for this now, is recruiting multi-sport athletes. So whether you're talking about health or actually getting your kid into a Division I school with a full scholarship, schools are now looking for multi-sport athletes, kids that are athletic, kids that have a multitude of skills, not just playing one sport year round where they have one skill set. That kid that plays one sport year round is much more prone to injury later on, a breakdown in their performance from movement deficiencies because they just don't have the versatility to handle high workloads. And we have a lot of things going on with kids right now that's very fascinating to me and very concerning to me at the same time. So as I'm working with my kids to help let them be kids, let them play, let them learn at their own pace, express their creativity, develop a connection with nature, move frequently, move often, and again, put the kid life back into kids a little bit. And I'm almost certain that those things also, in the meantime, as I'm writing this book, will help teach men about the things that help boost testosterone and self-sufficiency. And I think all of the things that are missing right now.
It's so important to instill those habits, from a young age, because I bring it up. I bring it up very often in my interviews that I don't have a sweet tooth. I grew up eating crap. Don't get me wrong, very palatable, high gluten, highly processed chicken nuggets and fries, But I never did have a sweet tooth where I would, I don't like cereal, I don't like, candy bars, I don't like Skittles, I don't like things like that. So because I didn't grow up eating those things, it's very easy for me to say no to those things. But you put a pizza in front of me, dude, or you put something that's like savory and salty and maybe some sweetness to it, I cannot stop eating. And just like you said, like instilling those habits of like sports, like multi-sport kids, where maybe they're doing some tumbling, maybe they're doing some gymnastics, maybe they're doing a little bit of weight training and maybe some sprinting. Those things will translate to other sports. Those modalities can be applied to another modality. And having that exposure earlier on, those habits are going to be, long-lasting into adulthood. And that is such a great work you're doing there, because nothing upsets me more than having a person that has discovered the paleo ways, or the, you call it ways, and they are, hitting the gym and they're getting better, and then you look at their family and they're like, well, they're kids, we can't do anything about them. Or I don't want my husband or wife, like they're doing their own thing, I'm doing my own thing. And it's so upsetting, because as a protector, as the, as part of that family, you should care about the outcomes of everyone's health. And sometimes it's just, maybe it's a subject that wife or husband don't want to broach, and you guys are happy like that, and that's cool. But there has to be at least an attempt to bring the whole family together for the future, for the benefit of the whole community. And it's just so hard to get, that buy-in, especially from family members, especially from, like close friends, because, it's just so hard to get that motivation. And having those strategies to present this information in a way that is going to maybe make something click in your head on how to help your kids and then help yourself. That is going to be an invaluable tool in our arsenal of strategies to help this community.
Yeah, and the more we know about childhood development and, the early years of a baby, 0 to 1 years old as an infant, and then on up to 3, 4, 5 years old, the kids, as they develop, they're developing, their taste buds, they're developing their food associations, they're developing brain centers still. They're still populating their gut with gut bacteria. And the more we know about, gut bacteria is very, 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 very fascinating, way over my head. Like, I know enough about that to have a conversation about it, but, it's so complex. One thing that we do know, though, is that kids are still developing, in the womb. What a mom eats helps develop the bacteria inside of their future baby. And then as a kid is, going through his first year, it's still developing its gut bacteria. So like how you feed that kid also sets that kid up to be an adult that either craves bad foods or is one of those children who just gains weight more than others. We now know that like obesity can be, at least to some degree, hereditary. What the parents pass on to the kids is actually setting them up to be that one friend that everybody has that is, kind of upset that Joe and Cindy can eat whatever they want and they stay skinny, but whatever I eat makes me gain 10 pounds. Some of that has to do with, like your gut bacteria and the health that you were kind of handed down. So as parents, you do have an incredibly tall duty to, at least, like you said, give your kids a fighting chance and not succumb to the fact that this food or that food is socially acceptable and it's cheap and I don't want to feel like the weird one. And unfortunately, parents who feed their kids well, I think, and respect their kids by feeding them well. I'm not one to tell parents how to raise their kids, but I can tell you what will and won't make them healthier from a biological standpoint. You can choose what you want to do from there, but it's unfortunate that parents that choose to do or try to do the right thing and give their kids a fighting chance from a biological perspective and a health perspective, that they end up getting made fun of, or there's some ridicule that usually comes along the way that, people tend to put their own insecurities on you. And usually if you're a parent, I'm speaking out to everybody out there, that if you're a parent that's doing the right thing, and trying to do the right thing, and you're getting ridiculed or made fun of, a lot of it has to do with people's own insecurities that they're putting on you. They don't believe that they can do it, and so they tend to try and shut you down for some odd reason. I don't know why people behave that way, but it's very sad. I'm also going to address that in the book as well. The societal need to, kind of like you said, feed kids candy because they're kids. You got to let them be kids, and kids eat candy, and that's just total BS. So not that kids can't have candy every now and again, but to treat it like it's their food source, their one and only food source.
Well, and I remember from previous conversations we've had, how important community is to you, and how this result cult started because of this, trying to get like-minded people together. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, your support system is absolutely everything. And I think, the result called business, I think, is absolutely fascinating. It's one that's close to my heart. And it started with a nutrition challenge that we were throwing in our gym, me and Michelle Richards. And we put it on. We had a couple people that wanted to try it. It was the Paleo Challenge. I bought a bunch of Robb's books, the Paleo Solution. And I just, at that time, that was the one book that seemed to make the most sense to people. It did a thorough job of kind of explaining the whole thing, a little bit of science plus, a little bit of narrative. And people got on board. They saw really good results, and I just nicknamed them. I'm a very corny name giver, I guess, and I love rhyming. So Result Cult became the name of the group that would meet up, and people were having just so much trouble that, in the very beginning, that initial sugar detox, people were really emotionally struggling. And, when you tell people they can't have grains, they're just like, what can I eat? Like as if they had eaten grains for 90% of their meal their entire life. And for some people, that was entirely true. So I invited everyone down to the club on a Sunday and said, hey, everybody just, I talked to everyone individually and said, why don't you cook one thing that you've done successfully so far and bring it, and then bring the recipe card and share it with other people. So that became a monthly ritual for us. That group grew from that initial meeting. That potluck went from 6 people in the very beginning, and then eventually grew to about 65 people attending these potlucks / workshops, where I would give some kind of presentation on, nutrition or diet, and Michelle would give them, a little 10-minute spiel on movement health, and we would bring local vendors together. Like, people need to know what's around them. A lot of cities now have these local vendors of organics, these CSA, community supported agriculture farms, that are usually in your local area. If you go to localharvest.org or .com.
We'll have it on the. I'll make sure to put it on the. I know sustainability is a big thing for us. So anytime we can talk about sustainability, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another 2-hour conversation.
Yeah.
But it's important. I think that's the next level. When people get healthy and they want higher meaning to what they do, like, talking about the connectivity with food. Once you get, well connected with your community and you have your own little supply chain going, and that was my little, plan to bring some of these local businesses together, to help support the local businesses, put some money in their pockets so they could stay around, and then introduce them to, the local people who had no idea that they existed. So they could all, mingle, get together, and created this nice energy that helped, I think, all of these people that were originally struggling and treating it like a 30-day diet plan, which so many people get caught up in that 30-day challenge thing. And then day 31, they're just back to square one because they no longer have that food list to give them permission to eat XYZ food. They're left back to their own decisions again. I think putting them in touch with local businesses that also are supporting their needs changes the whole ball game, because again, you're around other people that are like-minded. You can share ideas. You become inspired when you're around people sharing ideas, and enlightening you and giving you strategies to help beat XYZ problem. And you'd be surprised when you get around like-minded people. There's so many people that have gone through the same thing that you have. I don't care what your problem is. There's so many people, like, fitness experts like me. I've talked to so many that have gone through the chronic fatigue problem and had to nurse themselves back to health. There's other fitness professionals that have had, problems meal prepping. We're all people that are going through something. And when you get around a community that's supported, you're no longer at risk for just falling off of the wagon. You have a nice little support system. It's like your seatbelt to stay on the wagon.
And that's why community is so important. So if you're struggling as a parent, I'm sure there is a paleo meetup group in most major cities. Like, I'm part of the Phoenix Paleo meetup group. It's the, I don't remember if it's the second oldest or the oldest paleo group in the nation, and has been going around for a very long time. And we met a couple of times, and we have potlucks, and you're like, I can't even believe this exists within my own community. And especially if you have children and you want to change your diet and you want to bring along your family, maybe having this potlucks in your local community, start your own paleo meetup group or whatever you want to call it, meetup group, in order to have this support to make you successful. And it could even be a group of parents that want to have these athletic goals for their kids. And it could, it doesn't even have to be paleo, but like-minded people that value this information and will look for every advantage for their kids. And having this support group is just going to make it more successful for your goals.
And, like a little side note to that too, is that, it just the culturally right now where we're at, we're a text messaging culture. Clients text message me all the time. Friends text message all the time. People don't have near as much personal interaction as maybe we used to. And I think that's a key component to health is just, and, talk about, this whole hormone picture and, testosterone that you just mentioned, that sometimes just sexual activity can help boost testosterone alone by itself. And so not that that needs to happen on a large scale, but you can go out and just have
well, maybe it does, dude. Maybe it does.
Just a simple hug and a conversation can do wonders for your cortisol levels. Human contact helps also produce oxytocin, which is it's a pleasure hormone. You also get that when you walk bare feet in the dirt. Some research has shown that, ground contact helps produce oxytocin. So contact with nature, contact with other people, as simple as it sounds, can make a tremendous impact on the sustainability of your health. Rather than having thousands of artificial halfway friends where you're getting in debates on Facebook, maybe, kill that for a little while and have a face-to-face conversation regularly with 3 to 5 people. That alone can, I've seen it work wonders for people who just have maybe been in isolation, depressed, binge eating, like all of the classic symptoms of, poor health. Just by having some connectivity around like-minded people has made them feel supported enough to develop really good habits and sustain health still to this day.
And that's the goal. The end goal is, to sustain your health, and maybe by extension of that, sustain your family, and by extension of that, sustaining your community and the planet. And, this higher level goals can only be obtained one person at a time. Dude, what a great conversation. I think we could go for 2 hours, but I bet, all my listeners are sleeping now. So I want to be respectful to their, because we can drone and drone, man. Where can people find you? Like, where's your physical brick and mortar? What are your online handles? And the face space and interwebs links, man.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Mike Ritter. The Result Cult is our business page on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm Mike Ritter _ FDN. You can email me at mike@resultcult.com. And I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner at CrossFit Hyde Park in Tampa. You can find me there, or find me on the web. And I'm so eager to help more people. I'm so eager to, take you through the intake process and evaluate some of the things that I might have some input on. And on resultcult.com, we also have our ebook Balance Stress, which is nominated ebook of the year by Paleo Magazine last year. It's a hefty read, but it could change your life. And then my nutrition handbook, which kind of, goes over all the details of what we went over today, is also on there. It's called Heal and Thrive.
What if someone wants to be a client?
Email me at mike@theresultcult.com, and I would love to go over remote coaching options. I can coach from anywhere in the world via Skype or remote. If you're in Tampa, come see me. And if you're not, email me and I can get you started.
So, okay. So, dude, it's been a pleasure having you. One last question. Are you a Lightning, Tampa Bay Rays, or are you a Miami Marlins fan? And if you say the Braves, I'm just gonna delete this conversation and it's never happened.
No, I am a Tampa Bay Rays fan, but I do have a childhood tie to the Cleveland Indians.
Oh, okay, okay, I'm okay with the Cleveland Indians.
Yeah,
as long as it wasn't the Braves,
most
dude.
Confrontations. I feel like every time I tell somebody that I'm a Cleveland Indians fan, I get this like nice little sympathetic hug kind of look. Like, oh, I'm so sorry for you. They did go to the World Series last year, and we did lose in Game 7. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Well, dude, I moved to Clewiston, Florida. Well, actually Belgrade, Florida, when the Marlins won the first World Series, and they eliminated the Yankees, dude. It was great. And so now I'm cursed with being a Miami Marlins fan. So so love baseball, dude. Dude, thank you so much for being on my show. Hopefully, I'll get to see you at one of these conferences. Maybe if I go to Orlando, I'll make the trek and we can go eat at the Columbia in Tampa. That place is amazing. But dude, so nice having you, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.